Today we are talking with Omar, the Chief Operating Officer for Ascend, and he calls himself the Chief Revenue Officer 2.0, which means he runs the whole commercial org from his terminal. Let's find out how he does it. Hey Omar, how are you doing?
Hi, Harris. Yeah, very well, thanks.
Perfect. So you are the Chief Operating Officer at Ascend. You guys are so very heavy on AI. And can you maybe first tell me a little bit about yourself and Ascend and your role within the company?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my background pre-Ascend, I would describe it as a generalist, about as generalist as they come. So I actually started out not in tech, in investment banking for the first 3 years of my career in London and Amsterdam. Then I had a stint in venture capital, which was my first kind of foot in the door in tech and startups. And then really the vast majority since then has been on the operator side. So initially joined and kind of started the growth function within a Series A, helping them to use data to basically inform their product and commercial decisions, a company called Mixcloud, and then I actually went and started my own company called Temple shortly after that. Temple was basically a digital marketing platform for the music industry. And the core insight was music artists, managers, labels, both big and small, did not enjoy using tools like Meta Ads Manager or LinkedIn Ads Manager or drafting email campaign sequences on HubSpot. And so our vision was to kind of package what the ideal growth marketing stack would be in an abstracted way and verticalized and focused on music artists. And so I did that for 4 years, got to work with incredible managers and labels, the likes of Warner Music and AWOL and a lot of the big companies in the space. And we sold it in 2025 to a company called Groover, and it is still going and now part of the overall Groover offering. And I joined Ascend in August as Chief Operating Officer. And yeah, Ascend was really, really interesting, very different business. I'd never worked in the travel space, so that was interesting. But what was more interesting about Ascend was it was a very organic growth story. So it got really from 0 to 25 million in ARR purely organically through word of mouth, through referrals, and through a very small number of partnerships. And it had some tech, but not really. It had built up to this scale through just incredible people and incredible process that they built around it. But it had coincided, obviously, with everything happening in AI, that they were now really seriously taking both the expansion ambitions to take this from 25 to 100 in a short space of time, and also the plan to really integrate and embed AI and tech across the organization. So that was a really fun and interesting new challenge that I wanted to pursue. And I joined in August. So it's been about 8 months, and that's what I've been doing there since then.
All right. So you see, so it seems more like a transformation from more, or it was also AI from the beginning apart, or is it now accelerating or transforming it?
I'd say, yeah, it's transformational. So it's not, it had a very successful existing business, but rather than, I'd say, layering on bits of AI here and there, the stated goal really of the company is to become, the best and most AI native travel tech company around. And that is not only on the kind of internal and product facing sides, but also in go to market and across the organization and how we do everything, how we structure our meetings, how we communicate internally. We've really kind of embraced that transition.
Okay, all right. Can you walk me through that transition and what is your role in it?
Yeah, I'd say, but you can split my role into two angles. So one is actually not what a traditional COO would be doing at all, and that is actually kind of leading and owning the go-to-market stack and process. So we don't have a growth team. It is just me. We have account executives who will take on the calls, but we don't have, a growth marketer or, anyone running our ads or our email campaigns. Really, I mean, part of the reason for that is we are a scale up. We've been very lean, primarily bootstrapped. We have raised a reasonably small round for investment venture partners of about 3 million, but relative to, our size in 25 million ARR, it's not big. And so, we are always looking to be as lean as we can. And so that is a big part of my role, is doing the go-to-market, which isn't your typical COO kind of stuff, but it's what I do. The other side, I'd say, is more kind of COO 2.0 or COO in the land of AI, which is how can we be always thinking about what the next evolution of our processes and systems looks like in this massively changing world. So that's working with the product and engineering teams to really reflect, challenge, and put pressure on them to be thinking about, what does the evolution post agile look like, and are we how much of our process and code is now written by Claude Code, and are we really feeling the velocity, and are we educating everyone in the team about how to use this safely and setting the guardrails? Similarly, operationally as well, it's encouraging and incentivizing different team members to be able to like have a shared context layer that can allow us to create documents and marketing assets and stuff more efficiently. So yeah, it's two very different things, but all very much centered around this kind of AI native vision for the future.
Okay, I mentioned a few interesting points. The CRO, Chief Revenue Officer 2.0. For that, I've never heard that before, so I find it very interesting. And what skill set do you think the Chief Revenue Officer 2.0 is going to need to have?
I think the things I love about the current moment we're in, and I think the skills that I love seeing, love having more space for, is when you don't have to worry about the super time consuming parts of the job, and manual execution, the manual meta, like ads, audit, and exports, the like connecting super complex nurture sequences on HubSpot for your CRM. When you've freed up the time and headspace to build and execute on those things, you have much more time for strategy and positioning and creativity. And I think that has become more important than ever in an age where there's just so much content and so much noise and so much stuff. I think the best leaders, whether it's a CRO, whether it's a CEO or a COO, can spend more time like really articulating the vision, the positioning, and then building out the infrastructure to streamline the execution of that and do the kind of things that you can automate and can streamline.
You're freeing up time and you have time to think, because there are many people are just going from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, or doing something manual, and in between there's no time to even think strategically. Do you use primarily Claude? What other tools are in your stack?
So from my personal use case, it's primarily Claude Code. And so if I zoom in on one aspect of our operations, I'll talk about our go-to-market. That whole execution from end to end was Claude Code. So when I joined Ascend, it was actually called FlyFlat, and this was in August. So it was a very different looking and sounding business kind of visually. And really, we didn't have a growth system. As I mentioned, it was very much organic word of mouth. And so, I can walk through the process I went there, but in summary, everything was orchestrated by Claude Code, which was incredible. So being able to analyze thousands of transcripts of sales calls and, do deep research on great marketing frameworks, some of which I'd never heard of, some of which I had heard of and used before, things like Four Forces and Jobs to be Done, and taking a bunch of these frameworks and methodologies for analyzing the transcripts, and from those transcripts, drawing really, really good insights, creating personas, doing all of this really deep discovery work that is completely doable in a manual way, but would be so unfeasibly time consuming for a one person kind of growth team, or even a big team, to be honest. And so Claude was very much the orchestration layer from 0 to 1 in terms of this big transition we had, and this big rebrand and this big launch of our growth stack.
How can you make sure to trust Claude?
Firstly, I think hallucination has just got a lot better as the models have evolved. The accuracy has just improved and continues to improve. And so I think hallucination as a specific point is far less of an issue than it used to be. However, how do you trust it? I think the biggest, from a go-to-market orchestration perspective, the biggest issues around trust or errors are not actually from hallucinations. In my experience, they're from things like when it's building like an attribution engine, it having gaps in it that don't become apparent until you find attribution errors. And then you prod it and probe it and get it to analyze the script it's built, and it says, oh, there was a bug here that has meant this. So actually the trust issues are becoming more like software bugs. And I think this is where, to come back to kind of your point, CRO 2.0 what does it mean for the future of teams, the gap between technical and non-technical people is shrinking. And I don't think there is a world in which you have a go-to-market team that isn't becoming inherently aware of software processes, AI agents, building harnesses, doing all of these, building software and scripts for their go-to-market team. Historically, go-to-market and product and engineering are kind of two completely different things. But now the crossover and the kind of connection between the two is becoming really big, because a lot of what we're doing is just code. It is software scripts that run overnight. And so, yeah, to your point on trust, the better and more robust and resilient and the less fragile these things are, the better your overall operation. And so to that point, one of the next hires I'm really excited to do, and I think half the world is very excited to be doing right now, is a go-to-market engineer. Someone who is maybe a software engineer, maybe not necessarily a software engineer, but someone who's kind of technical enough, has spent enough hours tinkering and using Claude Code or Codex, building automations on any kind of, is aware of how to create these interconnected systems, but also has a lens of understanding what the growth stack is and what the different tools are out there, and being able to build a system, not just a campaign. And so, yeah, that line between technical and non-technical and go-to-market, I think, has really disappeared.
You're processing a lot of data. How do you store data?
I'd say, I mean, in terms of our stack, the core backbone of it is right now we use HubSpot, and we try and centralize everything as an engine in HubSpot. However, we build a huge number of custom interfaces around HubSpot. So HubSpot is, I would describe it as far from being like a seamless user experience, especially for kind of non-go-to-market people. It's not a nice thing to actually work on, and it's very kind of constrained. However, it's an incredibly powerful kind of, at least for our use case and our size, engine to store and kind of coordinate everything. And it's very easier than ever now to build even temporary interfaces on top. So to give you an example, we might have a meeting which is being transcribed, where people are asking, have we ever actually looked into, the percentage of people who end up converting, how long it took them to do their first booking when they were on a trial? Some random question, which might be a significant data point, and that leads us to start optimizing our operations around. Historically, we would have gone away. Someone would have had to go and either do some kind of crazy SQL query or go and figure that out in a very convoluted way on HubSpot. Now, because we've spent so much time on kind of this really, really intense HubSpot backbone, it's very easy for anyone to just quickly go and query that with natural language via the HubSpot API and present that in a very clear interface that anyone can see and see the charts of, and say, actually, this is a really useful dashboard. We should add this to this other place, and I would love to add these data points onto it. And so because it's so easy to build this visual layer on top of HubSpot now, we're seeing a much bigger excitement and curiosity and interest across the organization in data.
Which tasks do you still want to focus our people to do it, versus what do we really want to say this is AI?
I think there's always going to be a really, really important element of taste and judgment and creativity in campaigns. And so, if we were to let AI query our whole data set of transcripts and information and context, etc., the first time we did this, it produced, let's say, 20 kind of hooks or ideas for static creative that we could use as meta ads. I'd say from that 20, probably about 9 or 8 were like usable and good. However, as we've evolved and fed in feedback and ensured that feedback is contextually stored within, the overall context generation workflow, that's gone from, let's say, 8 or 9 out of 20 to 14 out of 20. I think over time that will probably get to 16 out of 20. I think it's very hard to imagine a world where it's 20 out of 20. I think there's always an element of just human taste and human judgment with, what will land and how can we be different and how can we separate ourselves from the norm, because also AI is kind of normalizing towards a very common and increasingly cluttered space of how it speaks and how it positions. So I think the role of humans will be how you can create differentiation, creativity, taste, and judgment within all of that. I think the areas as well that I would love to see more progress in, it is definitely exciting seeing some really great products coming in but I still think we're quite far away, is really, really high quality video creation.
Yeah.
I think you can do it now, and there's a bunch of incredible AI native video people who can build incredible marketing content for you. But I'm imagining a world where this can be truly orchestrated with your Claude Code or your orchestration layer. And I think that's where things will get really interesting, also quite busy and scary for our social media feeds. But I think that's where the gap is right now in truly elevating marketing.
How do you see then the role of marketing evolve? Will marketing become more important, less important?
I think good marketing will become more important. I think the brands that find the ways to stand out will have a platform because it will be so refreshing in a feed and an age of so much noise and so much slop, frankly, that I think the ones who still manage to find an edge and a differentiation and who spend time crafting these different experiences for leads will get the recognition that that deserves because people will find that refreshing. I think equally there will be a move towards, when everybody is doing email outbound, what's the thing that everybody can't physically do themselves? And, some really tangential things I see here, like I see a world in which actually physical marketing, sending mailers out to people, might actually start to become more trendy again because
Mhm.
historically it felt less programmatic. Probably we can make it a lot more targeted and programmatic now. And when you're getting 50 cold emails a week, but actually you get two kind of cold things in the post, maybe you're more likely to read those things. Equally, I think the kind of value of in-person conferences and in-person sales and human relationships will become more important than ever because people will naturally gravitate and seek that human connection that can't be replicated at scale on email and LinkedIn. And so, yeah, I think people will gravitate towards what's different as the abundance of AI marketing and AI outbound increases.
Yeah, going back to analog, the history keeps repeating.
It's always a cycle, exactly. Vinyl and CD.
Nice. Well, AI is changing how you are working a lot. So it's pretty much changing the future of work. So anyone who would like to start marketing, what skills do they need?
I think the most important skill and way of gaining that skill is experimenting with agentic tools. I personally have a very strong preference towards Claude Code,
Mhm.
but Codex is great, and there are a bunch of others that you can do. But my main advice would be, if you are interested broadly in marketing, would be to say, I want to go and create an end-to-end marketing campaign for the company I work at or a company I would like to work at, and then go and do it. There is nothing stopping you from doing everything end to end for the first time in history. And the process of just doing and trying and pushing the boundaries of what is possible with these agentic tools is the best way to learn. What drove me to write this growth engine post I did was actually just a bewilderment and shock at what was possible to orchestrate with Claude Code. Because despite the fact at this point I was using it, 10 plus hours a day, every basically minute outside of meetings, I have my terminal window open and I'm doing Claude Code. Like that's my new workspace. But despite
Mhm.
all of that use, I was still shocked every time I would think, oh, I wonder if I can connect it with HubSpot and get it to build our nurture flows. And you know, no one has necessarily done some of these things before because it's so new. But once you realize this is like having a digital teammate who can access any APIs and can read and write things, and if you provide the harness and the context around it, can be incredibly powerful and reliable and resilient. And so, yeah, my main advice is to just go and do it, experiment, try, fail, give it some real use cases and learn through using agentic tools first and foremost.
For your company in the coming years, Omar, what are key areas you want to work on?
Yeah, for us, the key areas is we want to go from the 25 or kind of so million ARR we're at now to get to at least 100 million, and we want to do so without scaling headcount, or at least scaling headcount in a meaningful way. We think there's always going to be a very strong need for people in the business, given what we do is very kind of high touch and white glove and people based. We're not an AI only travel concierge
Mhm.
service, but we want to basically empower every employee with jetpacks And so really the main area of focus for us right now is our core concierge offering. It's how can we provide the best possible travel booking experience for customers, that feels the most effortless, seamless, human, personalized, and do that at even more 4 or 5x the scale we have now without adding people. And that's really the core challenge we are optimizing around as a company. From a growth and go to market perspective, it's very much doing what we're doing now, which is, how can we get to a perspective very soon where we feel really, really, really solid unit economics, payback periods, that we can feel we can go either raise some money or just keep pumping money in and kind of have that as going from 5% revenue contribution a year ago to being, 60% revenue contribution and driving that 4 or 5x growth I've just talked about.
Yeah. When looking in the future, what do you think will be the number one business KPI where we're going to measure a business on?
I think probably the same as what it was before, which for most businesses, I think as a preference should always be some kind of retention measure. How much are you, I think the ultimate fit of have you built something people really want and need can be measured by are you retaining people? And so in a world of people getting to, 1, 2, 3, 10 million ARR in weeks or months, I think it is easy to get lost in like growth above all costs. But I think for us always as a company personally, and I think for many companies in an age of such hyper competition, knowing that you're retaining customers either through a combination of incredible product market fit, customer experience, and also probably essentially through really strong moats and defensibility are things that won't change in the future and should continue to be the metrics people optimize around.
Yeah, still the same holy grail.
Yeah, exactly.
Omar, amazing. Thank you for this and I much appreciated your time here.
No, thank you, Harris. Good to chat.